Well, hey, everybody. I'm grateful to be joined by Scott Cline, a nationally recognized authority in higher education enrollment management and financial aid strategy. Among other things, he now partners with institutions through SightLine to harness data analytics for smarter, more transparent enrollment and financial aid decisions. Welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thanks, Darin, for having me.
Awesome. Well, hey, look, let's get into it. We're at the National Small College Enrollment Conference in the very warm Charlotte, North Carolina, beautiful downtown area. But we've been at a conference. We're talking all about small college enrollment. It's fitting to have a conversation with you about the work that you're doing, in particular with SightLine. But maybe actually as a primer to SightLine, you could talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing more generally. I know that you really came from within higher education and now you're a full-time consultant, but maybe talk a little bit about your,
my own little journey.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah. Thanks. And yes, it's a bit of a shock. I'm actually based out of San Francisco, where it's been the coldest 2 months on record. So coming to Charlotte has been a bit of a change of weather for me as well. But I spent 20 years on the institutional side, working for a variety of different institutions, coming out of the financial aid world for the first half of my career, and then moving into enrollment management, also doing things like auxiliary services, like opening new buildings and, running food services as well there for institutions across California. So, and then I stepped out about a year ago and did full-time consulting work. And I've been partnering with different partners, including like SightLine, to really build, what I like to say, get into the messy human side of institutions and really help them build and be part of their teams and come and bring an institution from where they are to where they want to go in a really hands-on way. And that's why I love working with different partners, including SightLine, and also doing that work as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So, can you give us just that high-level overview of the kinds of work that you and the team are doing at SightLine? Am I wrong to see this as an analytics company focused purely on enrollment management at the institution? Is there more to it?
Yeah, I'd say, at its core, SightLine is a data analytics team. The founder, Ashley, really came out of the data science and then fell kind of into the higher ed world, and really was faced with this problem set where a lot of institutions don't have, the power or the ability to hire internally for a really strong data analytics team. And then how do they do that as a strong partner? And the thing that SightLine's really known for is really building around aid leveraging, tuition setting, and understanding and being able to project out and predict out for an institution where they're going to land in the given year on a multi-year basis for their revenue, their enrollment, their financial aid budgets as well.
Got it. So, what experiences in your own personal higher ed journey highlighted the need for better analytics and optimization? Effectively, how did you get to this kind of consulting work with SightLine?
Yeah, exactly. I think it comes out of, coming out of financial aid things. And I got into financial aid like everybody. They went to undergrad to be in a financial aid profession. No, you kind of fall into it. And, originally it was to help navigate students through and understand the complexities of how we pay for higher ed, which is enormously complex, as we know. And my job was really to help students and families navigate through that process. And I thought I was really good. And the thing that I led me to was really being able to harness the power of data and analytics and being able to really drive and be able to make it so that more students could, ultimately what they do is they don't want to know how to pay for school. They want to be able to achieve their dreams. And through that, being able to use data, being able to use analytics to make it possible for more students to have more access to our institutions. And so that's really the genesis of why I got really interested in. I was a history and political science major, for context, not a hard science, social science, love it, is, falling into that, but really getting my, desire to really leverage data and be able to have an institution be able to use that data in an informed way to meet its mission, meet its values, and ultimately serve more students that is really here to serve, because that's what we're all here to do in higher education.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so in your work, what stands out as maybe one of the most meaningful transformations you've been able to witness in a college's approach to financial aid or enrollment? Is there any one that you could think of?
Yeah, I think about the times when we didn't be able to use, an approach that, you take a really strong team, internally to an institution that really understands its mission, its values, and then you pair it up, particularly on the financial aid side, of how you always have limited dollars. You never have unlimited dollars unless you're a very even subset of institutions that is not the vast majority of institutions. You always have limited number of dollars that you're going to be able to spend, right? And how do you actually use that to achieve your mission and your values? And I think that's been the most rewarding work, is being able to roll up your sleeves with those institutions, both internally when I was working, as the director of financial aid or eventually the vice president of enrollment management, but also on the consulting side, where you're really trying to understand the ethos of what they're trying to achieve, and then be able to, how do you actually do that out there in the world and achieve the goals that you're setting out to do?
Yeah, no, that's great. Many leaders would describe financial aid optimization as a black box. Why do you think institutions struggle to just demystify this process, and what can be done to build maybe more transparency and trust in the analytics themselves?
Yeah. Two things as a foundation is the way that we pay for college in the United States is extraordinarily complex. The different funding sources, institutional, state, federal, and the variety of options on education from a price point. It's just complex. There's nothing more complex of how we pay for something, particularly higher education in this country. So you have that foundation. The second one is that we're, all the data is pointing to that we're at an all-time low for trust in higher education. And so you combine, as I talked about, always the hopes and dreams of students and their families combined with money conversations and, the uncertainty that lies ahead. You're making educated ideas about what you want to achieve. It's those are the two foundations that we're currently facing in higher education. And so then the question becomes from an institutional perspective, is how do you help an institution, own their data set and not have it just as a, third party or a consultant that can be really good around their data analytics. But the thing that I love working with SightLine is how do we actually make that data, that black box, actually the institution that owns it, and we're that partner that helps them understand it and live it, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be responsible for it. They're the ones who are going to have to answer to their students, their families, and their, and all their constituencies about what's actually inside that black box. And if they don't really start to unpack that and have strong partnership and people internally to really build that understanding, we can't actually start to build that foundation of trust with our families and our students if we ourselves don't understand what's in the black box. You can't explain a black box if you don't actually understand it to anybody else. And that helps us build that transparency. And the reason, again, you got usually limited resources, and you got to be able to articulate that to your different stakeholders. And that builds that trust and that honesty. And if you can be more open about it, we got to have a foundation of actually understanding and have a team that can really articulate what is in that black box. And that's what we hope to.
I think of SightLine as a rather boutique offering. And you're a small team of consultants doing some really important work. But the more I've talked to you or Ashley, I get the sense that you're also really on the cutting edge of some of the AI and the better technologies in the space in order to do the work that you're doing. I mean, let's talk about AI. From your vantage point, how are schools successfully adopting AI and predictive analytics, and how does SightLine leverage those types of things in their engagements?
Yeah, I think it starts with that foundation of building understanding, within the institution, and building capacity within the institution around what is and isn't AI. And really helping them from the leadership level and the people who are going to be on the ground doing this type of work with AI, is you got to start to build more capacity around the understanding of what does AI do, what goes into it. Because otherwise, at the end of the day, you got this black box yet again, and people are either fearful of it or using it in ways where it's they don't actually know what they're actually using it for, particularly around the data analytics. And the worst thing we want is, there is a bit of a black box always with that, but really understanding how it's actually being used. Because again, if we don't build that foundation for the institution and their leadership, how can you possibly start to make those decisions about, when you're relying on it for certain decision-making or certain analytics or certain types of engagement for students? And then let alone the trust factor that we currently are facing in higher education with our students, with the communities, and with those families, to be able to articulate and be able to say, this is how we're actually using AI. So how can we be more transparent about it? Why are we using it? Why are we not using something else? And how we actually really use it as that tool and that scaffolding, just like any other technology. Is this evolutionary for AI? Maybe. We're not sure yet. But I also think of it, how do we think about this as that continuation of the technology curve that we've always been on, from building websites to text messaging? Like, this is new, but it's also not new. And how do we build that trust and that framework that we're going forward? And ultimately, for students, they're asking these exact same questions. They want to know how the institution's using AI. And in both, the administrative side, around financial aid leveraging, but also in the teaching. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if an institution is silent on this, that speaks volume to, I think, our families and our students right now.
Yeah. So how does SightLine work with small colleges? We're here at the Small College Enrollment Conference, right? And I would imagine you work with all sorts of institutions. I know you do. But how do you work with small colleges in particular? And what are some of the considerations that you bring to those kinds of engagements?
Yeah. And I think back to my own time on the institutional side, like, I always had this hope and dream as a smaller to medium-sized institutions that I typically worked at, of having like this amazing data analytics team in-house. Usually that's impractical for particularly small institutions to be able to hire, retain, because they're in high demand, right? That's just the reality. And so working with SightLine in particular, why that niche of those small schools is we can not just be like a third-party consultant doing this work and then handing it off at the end of the day and say, hey, go run with this, but don't understand it. We're that partner to be able to continuously bounce those ideas off of, do the legwork where it needs to be done for multiple institutions, and be able to have that co-creation, co-delivery product for institutions. So we are still a third party, but I think more of our clients like to think of it as like we are part and integrated with that team, in a true way where we're actually helping them build and create and build that capacity where they might wish to have that in-house, but the reality is particularly for small institutions, it's not possible at a time where it's so critical to be able to have, access to data, access to analytics, for smaller institutions to be able to not just, survive, but really thrive as well. And those have been a lot of the conversations I've been overhearing at the conference this past day as well.
That's awesome. Well, I guess one last question for you. Like, what kind of questions or concerns do you most often hear from colleges as they move forward with these technologies and engaging with SightLine?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like, some of it's foundational. Where to begin? Should we be implementing new software? Should we implement this chatbot? There's a lot of just throw things at the kitchen sink and see what sticks type of questions that we're hearing right now. And usually my recommendations, both working with SightLine clients, but also generally in my practice when I'm engaging with an institution in more of an advisory role or project role, is like, let's take a step here. And it doesn't have to be, a long step, but let's start to set a foundation or framework for understanding why we both develop capacity, understanding, but also a framework to make decisions about what we're going to be trying, and how the thing that I'm hearing more and trying to advise clients on and institutions on is how do we see this as a continuous update and evolution? Because we know this technology is evolving so quickly. And the idea that we're going to fix a policy and implement it for the next 3 years, that's already out the door. And so how do you get an institution ready for, capable, and really comfortable with that? And that's a lot of that, as I say, rolling up the sleeves, doing the messy human stuff that I love to do.
Perfect. Well, Scott, thank you so much for taking your time and having this conversation. It was really good to get to know you a little better and learn more about SightLine.
Great to have me on, and I love the conversation as well, Darin.